There are a lot of reasons why people become people pleasers. And I don't really want to get into the whole familial trauma and women versus men. Besides that, I think the one thing that at least unites us is the fact that most of our people-pleasing tendencies come from conditioning. We are conditioned to be people pleasers in one way or another. I spent the majority of my life being a people pleaser. And honestly, I thought it was one of my best qualities. Growing up, I truly thought that, not knowing what a people pleaser was, I truly thought that me being so helpful and available for people in my life was my best quality. I thought it made me unique. Until I learned that it led to me being at some really dark points in my life, me being way too available to people, not setting boundaries, having low self-esteem, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I want to get into that today, and I want to talk about how I stopped being a people pleaser and the one word, which I'm sure all of you know, that really helped me along that way. Before we get into the video, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bridget. On this channel, you'll find me talk a lot about social anxiety, general anxiety, introvert stuff, a lot of mindset things. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go check out some of my other videos. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful or useful, comment below what you'd like to see more from me, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. So let's get into the video. So like I said, I was a people pleaser my whole life unknowingly, and it did lead me to some, I guess, low points in my life. And once I finally started to realize that those qualities that I thought made me so unique and that I thought were my best qualities were actually leading me to having that low self-esteem and not being able to set boundaries and leaving room for resentment to people in my life, I realized that I really need to start changing that. And the one thing that was so hard for me to do was to say no. And it was because I had that low self-esteem. So it was like a cycle. The people-pleasing led to low self-esteem, and the low self-esteem led to me not being able to stop people-pleasing. So it was just this never-ending cycle. And I kept repeating that cycle. The one thing that was hard for me to do was to say no to people because I feared rejection. I so desperately wanted people to like me. I wanted to belong somewhere in my life. And again, that is a conditioning, right? I don't want to get into the conditioning, but that's something that I learned growing up, that people weren't always going to be there. And so I tried my best to make myself so available so that they would want to be there. They would want to stay. And for a while, it was fine. It worked out in my favor. People liked me. People thought I was helpful. People thought I was friendly, the people that I talked to. And it was great. Everything was great until life became too crazy and it wasn't so great. And I didn't know how to set boundaries for myself. Like, adulting is so hard. There's so much. And if you are still stuck in that people-pleasing state in your life as an adult, how are you doing it? How are you living? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're living for other people, not for yourself. That is one thing that I wish I knew back then, because it would have saved me a whole lot of time. Now, saying no is difficult. It's extremely, extremely hard if you're a people pleaser. You're conditioned to say yes, yes, yes. And so rewiring your brain to say no is like trying to build anything without directions. And so I just started to practice to the people that I thought maybe wouldn't care, the people in my life that were close to me. And at first, people will probably be shocked. You're saying no? What do you mean? You're always there for me. That point that I talked about of resentment, that's when I realized I really needed to start saying no more often. Because I was saying yes to so many people, and yes all the time, and overbooking myself for so many things, when I couldn't fill all those requirements, people would be angry. And then I would get angry back at them because I would think to myself, I'm always available for you, and you're definitely not available for me as much. Or maybe I'm just too scared to ask. And then resentment creeps in. And then you watch some of your friendships that even though you valued, they dwindle off because you're holding that resentment and you're overbooking yourself and you start lying to people and chaos. That was one of those low points that I was talking about. That's when I realized I had to start saying no to people. It was difficult because sometimes those had to be the people that I didn't want to say no to, that I was scared that if I did say no, they would leave. And at the end of the day, what I really had to learn through trial and error, that practice, is that the people who accept your no are the ones that matter. The people that question your no and are not okay with your no are not the people that you want in your life. And it's a really hard thing to accept and understand and move past from, but it's something we really all have to deal with at one point or another. So saying no was hands down the hardest but most important thing that I had to do. Another thing I want to quickly mention is that self-esteem. Once I started using that no, I looked at myself differently. The more times you say no when you either don't want to do it or you can't do it, the better you feel about yourself. The more value that you can give. The more that when you look in the mirror, you see that worth. Because your time is important. Your time is valuable. And if you're not spending it in the right areas, obviously you're going to have low self-esteem. You're not going to think that you're important. And that was another thing, something I really had to learn, that I was important, I was valuable, and I needed to start setting those boundaries for myself. Which brings me to my next point, the setting boundaries. One thing I want to say is that as I started to stop with some of those people-pleasing tendencies, I really looked at people in my life in a different way. I have so much respect for the people who maybe were never people pleasers, or the people who were people pleasers and are not anymore. The way they carry themselves. I have friends in my life who fall into those two categories. I have so much respect for them, and the way that they can just say no and leave it at that, I admire that so much. I'm getting better at it now, 100%. But I used to do this thing when I first started on my no journey, where I would say, oh no, I can't because so-and-so. And you don't even need that. You can just say, no, I can't. That's it, and leave it at that. When I first started doing it, when I felt like I needed to give people a reason, it was still coming from a place of that fear of rejection, right? That fear that that person wouldn't want to be in your life anymore. And I looked at those people who would just say no and leave it at that. And not only did I respect them, I didn't even question it myself, right? So why would I expect someone else to question me? I want to bring it back to this point where I feel like it honestly relates to everything. People don't care. Sometimes you get so in your head and you think it's like me. People are going to think that I'm weird, or people aren't going to like me anymore, or people are going to notice this and the picture that I posted, or blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares. And I don't know why it took me 20 plus years of my life to figure that out. That should be something we learn from the start. And I really think someone needs to rewrite the education system or something, because that should be drilled into our brains from the start. Nobody cares. So stop worrying about stupid things and stop thinking that people are going to leave when they're not. Well, some people will, but then that means that they're not meant for you and whatever. And that is something I wish I knew as well on my whole people-pleasing journey. Nobody cares. So to give you the hard truth, stop making it so much about you. And I know that sounds awful to say, but it's true. And once you let that go, it becomes so much easier to start doing some of these practices. Like saying no, that person's not gonna care. It's not the end of the world if you can't get dinner on Wednesday. It's not. So to put all of those in order of importance, I would say probably start with the last thing that I talked about, which is nobody cares. Second, saying no. Third, looking at yourself in a better light. And fourth, setting those boundaries. There's so much more to people pleasing, and so much more I continue to learn about myself as a recovering people pleaser. And I just want to share some of the latest things with you guys and, have an honest discussion. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it useful as always, and I will see you next time.